Welcome to NFT Sundays, a weekly conversation around art and technology, brought to you by DMINTI and the Museum of Crypto Art. I'm Colborn of the Museum of Crypto. Welcome to our first in-person interview. The wonderful Micol from VerticalCrypto Art. I'm Colborn. This is NFT Sundays. And thank you to DMINTI for bringing us here today. Always super lovely to see you, Micol.
Likewise.
And it always seems to come in perhaps like these crucial moments, right? These pivotal changes. You can feel the energy, the tide changing, and we've come quite far together. So first, let's start simple. How are you?
I'm okay. It's been a busy start of the year, to be honest. And I feel like now, as you said, it's a moment that it's a bit more quiet. So time for reflection, time for thinking, where am I and where am I going?
I think we feel that a lot in the space. A lot of perhaps the icons we grew up with, artist icons, have taken a step back. The collectors that we knew perhaps seem to have taken a step back. There has been a monumental shift. And it's hard to even begin to put that into words, but let's rewind it, perhaps, and talk about what it was like in the beginning and what excited you so much about crypto art and NFTs.
I always go back to this because I think about it a lot, actually, about like, why did I start? What was it that led me into doing vertical crypto art or just kind of being interested? And I think for me, it was always this underground niche culture that was crypto art. And that's been akin to my life, like my in real life. My passions, what I've been doing before NFTs, before crypto art. And I found that kind of like it was almost like an online underground world that I could tap into. And I love that.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, it was when you came on the scene, it was kind of just like this wonderful moment because you were almost like a pure curator, right? You held such like deep idealism, you had such a keen eye, and you were telling stories at a time where I think, there was Power Surge on one side doing
Absolutely.
Kind of like the comedy and you were just like the high end tastemaker but of course, like still embracing the fun and spirit of it. Do you want to maybe just talk about and describe those early feelings?
Yeah, I think, first of all, like Power Surge, oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
What an idol and what a legend.
Power Surge.
Yes, yeah. Please come back.
We need you.
We need you and we loved your videos. He definitely was an inspiration to me. I was looking at his videos and thinking, this is, first of all, so funny and so cool.
Yeah.
He really brought a different eye into like storytelling of news, media and whatnot. For me, my angle was always like artist first, kind of, talking about what is the story behind the work that is being created. And I remember like the first videos that I did was just kind of like me popping onto Twitter DMs of people being like, hey, I'd like to do some short videos about your work. Are you up for like replying to like 3-4 questions? And like that kind of like connection between like me and the artist was like, oh my God, like somebody wants to know about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Even though like I'm no one, I am someone to someone, right? Like this work has meant something to someone on probably the other side of the world, because actually the majority of artists that I spoke to initially were from Argentina.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Argentinian crypto art movement is so fundamental to the history of this movement as a whole. And that's kind of like how it started. And I still wanted for it to be like fun, you know, digestible, like for people to understand what goes behind these artworks and these stories in a way that feels, you know, less kind of like high-end or like very curatorially like talked of, you know?
It was incredibly accessible.
Yeah.
But you made it feel valuable. And just yesterday, I was speaking also with Julian, right, of Crypto Argentina. And I think that's something that, of course, we all shared, right? That rawness and that appreciation, perhaps that understanding of what it meant to create freely within a community, and perhaps not so individualistic. Is there anything you would perhaps maybe want to share about your background that might have informed how these values developed?
I mean, for me, like, I don't know if it's something with my background specifically, but I have always thought that winning or like doing things with a group, with someone else, like sharing something, is so much more fun than doing it alone. And that's how I've done everything in my life. And when I came into crypto art, actually one thing that I found absolutely incredible was the collaborations.
Yeah.
So many collaborations, which actually we don't even see that many anymore. And for me, it was like, wow, like, you know, all of these artists, like 3, 4, 5, 6, even 10 artists, if you think about the early async art pieces, right? Like the big 10, 20 artist collaborations. They're all coming together because of one shared ideal, one shared vision, and they all want to input creatively into that. I didn't really care about, you know, how much the piece is going to sell, who's going to get what. It's more about the common vision. And that was cool to me because it was kind of my ideals and how I live my life as well. Yeah, so I think actually when you're talking about now just individualism, I was like, yeah, actually, it's become a very individualistic space, really.
And I think you touch on an important point that maybe we can dig into together about how in these collaborations, it never really perhaps was about the aesthetic of the piece, because most of the times it did look disjointed or fractured. But you think about like the async first supper piece, you can see it so clearly. It's what it stood for.
Yes.
Right? It was those artists coming to the table together to kind of like set the tone and expectation. And, you know, there's another piece on Super Rare of, I think it was the Gen Z collection, where that marked a very interesting and pivotal moment in time. And there are those collaborative markers. Gosh, it's so, do you feel the weight? Like I feel the weight of right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people are exhausted and tired and less friendly and kind of drowned out by almost like, I call it the noise of the casino. Where do you think kind of these things might have begun to shift?
I think it goes back to money.
Yeah.
It just goes back to that, right? Like if you think about it at the time, yes, you know, it wasn't like nobody was making money, but there wasn't really that much money to be made. So collectors were collecting out of collecting with no kind of ROI concept in mind. And artists were creating because they almost found that they had this output that they could create freely for. And it was just like, wow, now I can do anything I want with no boundaries, no rules, no limitations. I can collaborate with 20 artists if I want to. And that feeling that almost like it was adrenaline, like it was adrenalinic.
Yeah.
I don't know if you say that, but it was.
I get it, yeah.
It's like, wow. And like going on Twitter for me specifically, like every day was like a excitement.
It was like coming home to family almost.
Yeah. Whilst now I feel I'm literally treading on eggshells. Like every single word or every single anything, content, I have to think about it like probably 20 times. And I'm nervous about it, And I think it's a shared sentiment.
I struggle with that same idea of voice, right? And if we must be struggling with that voice, what is I imagine the artist would as well. And exactly. I imagine expressing that in this current condition is difficult. And then to begin to market like inauthentic voice must be very, very hard, right? And I agree that you're right. In the beginning, you have artists who there were pieces. I was digging through almost like I was looking for diamonds in the rough, call it, right? Of pieces that were minted 2-3 years ago. And now if somebody doesn't sell a piece for a week, flooded DMs, what is going on?
Drama, yeah.
Yeah.
But mostly like, I sometimes try to think of it from the other perspective, right? The artist perspective. And I think, how frightening can it be? Every time you need to put yourself on the market.
Yeah.
And then kind of having that fear of, not selling and maybe being seen by, the community or whatever we want to call it. Oh, this artist has a piece and it's not sold for like a week.
Right.
And so like, I think about it in that way and it must be scary. And I know it is scary for a lot of artists. And that wasn't really the case, like it was more about the output as a creative output rather than the output as a financial output only, or not only, but partially as well.
Yeah.
And it kind of changes your whole perspective if you think about it like that, even for me.
Yeah.
Like I imagine even for you, like even from a community or brand perspective, like when you start thinking about things as I used to always call VerticalCrypto Art a project, right? Like, and now people are like, it's not really a project anymore, it's like a business.
Yeah.
And that scares me a little bit. It's like, yeah, but still a project, like, and I think, the mindset shift can be problematic.
I think it relates, there's a couple words, right? Momentum, the speed of the cryptocurrency, and like a fear of loss of momentum and loss of voice, leading to questions and doubts of like authenticity. And before, when it was so abstract, right? There was an exceptionally volatile currency in Ethereum or Tezos, right? And then there was an artwork. And it was never about that. It was more about the timestamp in my mind, that blockchain timestamp that like consecrated that relationship. And then like having a conversation about the work or explaining why, or being like, thank you so much for, selling this to me. And now it works almost in the inverse. It's like, will you buy this?
Yes. It's interesting when you say that it's a timestamp, because actually like even, I don't consider myself a collector at all, but I have collected art, and every single piece brings me back to a specific moment in time, a specific feeling, a specific conversation, a specific interaction. And it is really a diary. It is like my diary and my timetable and my journey in every way or form into crypto art and in crypto art. I wonder if that's the same for everybody, you know?
I will just say very like personally and openly that my collector story was one of personal becoming, right? I was at a point where I did not know, right? And I had done like 2017 to 2020 was a abysmal time to be in crypto as a market, right? And I was feeling both like personally and professionally hurt by a lot of the financial speculation that occurred during that period and like subsequent fallout. So to find like artists using the medium in a way to express vision and values that reawoke my passion for cryptocurrency in 2017, that was like the philosophical leap. So I don't know. But I agree. Each one becomes almost like that song from your past that when you hear it, you're immediately transported. And even in like my collection, I think I see those fractured moments, or like an affinity for trash art or something that is like strong or glitchy, and desire to just like transition personally from that financial person that was concerned with those investments to this artistic vision and idea of community. Not to mention like how it was compounded, of course, by like coronavirus.
Of course.
Yeah. And the closeness that I think a lot of people were searching for.
It's also, there's a concept, I think, around like tastemakers, right? Like, I think if I look back one or 2 years ago, the tastemakers were really single individuals, right? Like each and every one of us was its own tastemaker. Whether you're an artist, you're a collector, you're whatever. I don't think that's the case anymore. Like I think we, myself included, cumulative as a community, rely on external, like specific tastemakers that are, you know, that are not maybe tastemakers per se, but are more financial investment advice, kind of. And so that has shifted a lot of the, I think, also kind of individual thinking of people, of saying, you know, oh, maybe I shouldn't collect, or I shouldn't buy this piece because nobody says I should, if that makes sense. Whilst
it does, of course.
At the time, that didn't really happen. You know, you are your own tastemaker.
Yeah.
And the sharing of the art you collected is more of a celebration of a moment that you have with another person, with another artist, or with a group of artists, rather than a celebration of a investment, of a kind of, I have this money and I spent it on this.
There's really wonderful points here. And, you know, I just remember, you know, I collected 350 pieces on Super Rare. I looked at the average price, $300, right? It's hard to believe because now the average price of a Super Rare piece is $50,000, right? So of course, like I still see wonderful art there, but I can't buy it. And so much of the fun was just putting those little bits of that collage in order at like a price I could afford. Yeah. So the market to me now, I don't go back. Like I'm uninterested because I don't even want to begin to like pretend that I can like afford and play in this, or because I don't frankly ever want to sell anything. It's emotional. It means more to me than it would to anybody else. And maybe this is just a good opportunity to, because I never did, but I know you're very active there, like talk about what is happening on Tezos and maybe again, like trace the whole thing.
Yeah. That's interesting because it's exactly how I kind of felt so for me, like when I started looking into crypto art, I think like super rare was already unaffordable, like it was already off my budget.
Yeah.
So I was looking at art, I was definitely speaking about the art and connecting with the artists, but it's funny because when you go into crypto art, you also want to collect. Like you want to have that digital timestamp. You want to be able to say, this is mine. Like I own this token. I have this on the blockchain. And I really couldn't do that. That's also why I was we were doing a lot with Rarible because Rarible had that space and place for lower entry points, but still amazing art. Amazing, emerging, talented artists.
And it's funny you mentioned that because the marketplace was ruined, just to come full circle, when they financialized it with the Rari token.
They did. And when they went kind of...
Well, then it got very
more
scammy.
Yeah, exactly. With like, the Twitter drops and like some of the bigger brands or the Pepsi or... I remember
like
there
the
was
triple X stuff was really terrible.
Yeah, which is a shame. But yeah, like, and that's when kind of that happened, because I think it was very close. Like the Rari token, I think was like November, December, or something like that of 2020, and then Tezos and Hic et Nunc started in like end of Feb.
Yeah.
Of 2021.
Yeah.
And I found this thanks to Mario Quasimodo, who I definitely always say that we kind of like found this little like paradise of art together. Yeah. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like here people don't care. They don't care about what they're selling for. They just want to do art, exactly like kind of how it started.
Yeah.
And so for someone who is maybe, not as technical and not like within that doesn't know all of the nuances of each and every blockchain, I was like, this is incredible. Like what is happening here is why I fell in love with crypto art all over again. And it really created like a culture and a community and an ecosystem, which still to this day keeps thriving really on these same values. And it led more artists in and artists who would have never really minted before if it wasn't because of the low kind of accessibility and the low minting fees and whatnot. And one thing that I was speaking to somebody completely random person like the other day, and he told me, oh, but like NFTs are just for like very wealthy people. And to hear these things like kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because if you hear Vitalik speaking about Ethereum, that's not why the blockchain was created.
Right.
It was exactly the opposite. And so Tezos is an ecosystem which allows that and allows for people to understand the value of the blockchain and what it means and what a token is and how they can have an output without being cut out.
It's low stakes.
Yeah.
Lower stakes, right?
Lower stakes,
yeah. It's but that's where you see art thrive.
Exactly.
That's where you really see art thrive, when people are free to create.
Exactly.
Outside, and it's just such an interesting and terrible thing, I don't have any kids, but now I feel like I know what it's like for your kid to like leave the house and then go make a mistake, and that like hurts, but there's nothing you can do. and you can yell and scream and you can be reactionary, but it doesn't change the fact that the thing is evolving and growing and going to go through its own trials and mistakes.
Definitely.
And
But if you think about it, like, I mean, I was talking to some of the artists of our residency the other day, and I told them, if I think about Ethereum now, like, I rarely think about art anymore.
yeah.
I rarely think about art. I know there's some great artists on Super Rare and all of these like big marketplaces, but to be honest, my first conscious thought when I say the word Ethereum is really collectibles,
Yeah.
and that whole ecosystem. If I think about art, at the moment, it is on Tezos. That's where I go to find, look, be fully immersed into the art and culture like ecosystem.
To me, it's so parallel to 2017 because all of those tokens were utility tokens, right? And it became, people came and they asked, like, what is the utility of the art? And it's just like, you know, if it's not catharsis for the individual to just put that out there and express that, then they're not creating for anything other than that. And hopefully, maybe, I don't even know if some artists don't care how you feel and react to it. So we saw that, right? And it was something as simple and stupid as like the tiniest pixel screen that was the utility that turned it all into a casino.
Exactly. It is a casino.
Yeah, it's really heavy.
And people are, you know, they want to win.
But there are, you know, I don't want to be all doom and gloom,
No,
of course,
exactly.
because, you know, there are incredible people here and there are incredible artists who we just know are committed. And they will step up when the time is right and lead the way with like the strength of their voices.
And I mean, I think we're, you know, being here in this home, physically present in the Mocha home, actually is, in a way, you know, it feels like definitely something has shifted for the positive. Like something has been created out of a common vision, out of that kind of those values that are there within the crypto art space that I think are still there. And, you know, this church where we're at is an embodiment of that.
It was certainly an intentional symbol, right? And I always like to play with like the reappropriation of sacred symbols and like decade-old symbology, right? This is, it's pretty special to begin to feel out and understand this space and what we're capable of. And I guess we can say, like, you know, last night we had 9 people for dinner and everybody slept here, and it feels so, and people ask, like, when was the last time you cooked for this many people? And it racked my brain. I don't know, years and years. So I think there is like a glimmer of hope in it all. And, you know, I know you, I think, do a better job than myself of like kind of keeping a physical digital balance.
I try. It's tough, you know, because in a way, like the online space and so much time we spent online, you create a very safe place and a very like safe, you know, group and like kind of cover for yourself. And when you have to go out into the physical world, you're exposed to many things. You're exposed to yourself, like you're exposed to trying to depict what you're doing for people who maybe don't know. Like you're exposed to, for me specifically, like not being a massive like extrovert, as you know very well. It's like it brings up like a lot of like things. But I also think like it's necessary, 100%. And there's connections that you make when you meet people and when you talk to people, especially people who you've been talking online for 2 years, you know.
Sure.
I met Judy the other day, and, you know, we've been talking about the same things, about our common values and ethos and communities that we nurture and grew, especially Judy and Bea from Dada, for, you know, over a year now. And to have that moment to share these things is just so special. And so to have like places like this, or, you know, other like places around the world where you can like have that moment together, yeah, I don't know, it brings you, it gives you comfort, because you think I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And there's more people that think like me.
I mean, they keep the spirit for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like Venezuelan anarchists, like just go, push, crush, like, and they seem to have largely stepped out of the markets.
Yes.
Which maybe is the light for us all.
It's the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Hopefully, may we be so lucky to just sit and create and step out of the market. There was something that I did want to speak with you about, and it was in relation to this idea of the online being the safe space, the curation of your own friend network and group, and the idea of like digital metaverse spaces, right? So maybe the first question is, what ideals do you dream and hold for Metaverse?
Inclusivity, accessibility, and weirdness, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, just those three things combined. I think accessibility and inclusivity is definitely key, which at the moment, it's a struggle, I believe. But also, like, you know, the concept of the digital metaverse, whatever that means, in my mind is a place where there's no boundaries, even architecturally speaking. You know, we're in the metaverse. We can do whatever we want, really. And so just kind of like play with that concept of making it fun and weird and maybe not aesthetically pleasing and not as we experience physical spaces. And through that concept of experiencing things differently in the digital world, then also like allowing for that creativity to come out in that way.
And that was the scariest thing for me about Facebook Meta's Metaverse, was just the sterility of it.
Yeah.
Right? Just like, it was so sterile. What is that if not like a place to further like confine and define and like put you in, you know, a box where you have like the pretend, it starts to get like very Wall-E for me, of just like people trapped in chairs, like riding around.
And it's the concept of like, I think goes back to like wanting to define, wanting to label, wanting to stop in a way. Like there's this sense of like, I was thinking about this actually like a lot. It's like innovation, you know, like the concept of innovation, but it goes up to a certain point and then it gets stopped because it's like, but not too much, you know?
Right.
Not too much innovation, not too much creative freedom, not too much of anything, you know? It's better to cap it at a certain level. And that's how, kind of going back to where we started this conversation, that's why crypto art existed, because it's like, there's no caps here. Well, just the caps of Robinus maybe, but like there's no cap in what we can do, you know? This is uncapped.
But there is a constant pressure from especially like big brands and, you know, these kind of like bigger entities to cap.
And maybe that's what we're feeling is like the exponential uptake of the ability to express creativity, like hitting that ceiling, right? And trying to, but no, just like getting tamped down.
Yeah, exactly.
Because those forces are incredibly powerful and they're very mysterious. So it's very hard to like direct anger. There is this, a quote I'll never forget from an artist, Brandon Walsh, right? Who
is amazing.
He can tell his own story, but was homeless for many, many years. He used to, he would tell me he used to pick up trash and show people online trash bags, and they'd send him like $10 worth of Ethereum, right? And he told me that like they encourage you to look at each other so you do not look up, right? And I feel that same sentiment. I hear it from a lot of people in that the outside continues to feel scarier and scarier. Doubly, triply, 10x so because of like the pandemic and forced social distancing and like the psychological effects of seeing somebody else as a threat, the dehumanizing of like masks. I worry about kind of like the long-standing traumatic effects of this and the way this is shaping people to like stay indoors, stay online, get into more like addictive and compulsive behaviors.
Especially when, the online can basically be, as you said, like a digital casino, right?
Yeah.
And then you're constantly chasing some sort of golden pot, like at the end of the rainbow, running towards the end of the rainbow.
It's literally Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? You are like bored, you do not know what to do, you aspire to be in like the yacht club, you just like are compulsive and animalistic. And that for me is really funny because I worked as a research assistant in a primate cognition lab. So I would spend like all day studying how monkeys think and perform on cognitive tests.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. For many years I did this.
Wow.
And I see a lot of parallels. And it's frightening, right? Because there is this base evolutionary, plug, perform, seek reward. And it could be a reward as small as a banana pellet.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it becomes a very individualistic game.
Absolutely. It is very individualistic. Even though, the word community, I think, gets bounced around a lot. It's probably the most misused word around the ecosystem, because realistically, there's a greater kind of good effort that comes out of Web3 and a lot of initiatives. If you think about currently what's happening with Ukraine, there's a lot of good initiatives that have come out of the Web3 ecosystem from that, and people joining in together. But when we talk about community and we're all in this together, we're all artists, we're all together in something, realistically, that's not really how it is. Everybody is on their own journey. Whether it's good or bad, even us specifically are in our own journey. We might share similar ethos, similar values, but again, I see it as a very individualistic space, really.
Yeah.
And a very siloed space as well.
And I generally think maybe this is me personally, but like giving money is the lowest effort to like make you feel good about yourself and say that you did something.
Yeah, true.
Right? Like if you cared, you would do something. And it's hard. Feeling helpless, feeling like vulnerable is hard. But how it gets like expressed or turned into art or turned into a meme, or I think that is like, again, capturing that sovereignty, that active creation, that power.
Yeah. I think it just kind of all comes back to that idea of creative freedom. And I don't think in the current space, I personally don't think a lot of artists feel they can be creatively free.
Yeah. And I think,
as they would like to.
And I think the whole purpose in the beginning was to tell more people they were artists,
yeah.
right? And that they could be creatively free.
But I also think on a positive note, they should.
Yes.
And like we should bring it back to that moment. And we should embrace artists that are experimenting, that are creatively free, that really don't see the only output as the market output for their work.
Right.
I kind of always go back to him, but I do think that somebody like Robness sets an example for that.
Yeah.
Where he really has always done whatever he wanted. And yes, now he's seeing, a lot of like recognition and a lot of like limelight for what he's done, but he kind of always was creatively free.
Yeah.
And as him, many others. If you think about Stella Bell, I probably think about the same,
Yeah.
Miss Al Simpson, the same. Like,
yeah.
Creating for creating.
Yeah.
And then, there's an output for sure.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think about XCopy a lot, and I think about those images, and it's so interesting that, like, they took XCopy to such enormous heights, but somebody like Norman Harmon, who's like a critique and visual aesthetic is just as strong. Why? I don't know.
Why? Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of inexplicable things, and the market is certainly irrational at times, and why things build momentum or get started it's been so interesting to see when that happens. It's its own living, breathing force that, and I mean, it's not all bad. Like, I think obviously what Snowfro did with art blocks and creating a marketplace for generative art was fundamental.
Absolutely.
And it gave people a tremendous opportunity. And Kenny Schachter always says, like you guys, you built a market for digital artists where there was none. There is like real, honest to God infrastructure with provenance and authenticity and like an ability to preserve and store these artworks. So it's not all bad.
No, it isn't. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel we're living. I'm excited every day about what I do. Like,
right.
I wake up and I am excited to work, if I can call it work, of doing what I'm doing, and of living this moment, and of being able to speak to so many talented creators and thought leaders and whoever is, thinking and feeling and doing. And it is, in many ways, a renaissance, a revolution, a huge technological innovation. I just think it kind of sometimes needs to be reminded that, there's values, there's ethos, there's things that are important beneath the market.
Yeah.
That are currently hidden, but are there.
And I think we're discouraged now, perhaps, but for many artists and individuals, this is the first time they've purchased crypto. They now understand how to use like a browser extension and wallet. Many are getting hardware wallets. They're learning through doing. And I always tell people, like, if you want to begin to understand, take a bit of money and invest it,
Yes.
and start to follow and
Yes.
and begin to play. That is generally more of a first world luxury, but there are alternative systems that are low cost, and there are people willing to give grants to artists to create. And you are out there like bless you for your residency program. Can you tell people about that? Because it's probably one of the best and brightest lights in this space.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that came out of a need, right? Like, artists needed education. They needed tools, resources that would allow them to be onboarded onto Web3 and be onboarded onto CryptoArt in a way that would provide them some guidance and a community, like an actual community of people that are like-minded and in your same space globally.
Yeah.
And that's how it started, like the idea was to really as an experiment, to be honest. Like in June last year, I was like, let's try out this concept of an online NFT residency and see how it turns out.
Yeah.
And it's gone really well. Really? And artists are getting 8 to 12 weeks of classes on all sorts of things, from speaking to you and Shivani to Untitled XYZ to people like Art Gnome to Dada to really like, I can't even, like, we have 30 plus mentors teaching classes, and not only doing one-to-ones and just sharing their knowledge and time and skills and resources, and talking about important topics such as hardware wallets, what are hardware wallets? How do you secure your assets? Like all of these like things and essential topics that are very native to the NFT space. It's not an artist residency. Like I always say that we're not a standard art residency where artists go and create. No, we're here to give global artists the tools, the knowledge, the resources to access the NFT space and to at least find a good starting base.
It's the most beautiful thing. It reminds me of like university and the friends that I made there, because I see these people from all around the world, like Cuba, like Eastern Europe, Norway, and they remain friends.
Yeah.
And they're like commenting and supporting,
yes.
and they stay in these groups, and
it's insane. Like, yeah. Honestly, it's really like, to me, I know it's super cheesy, but it is really the most heartwarming thing I've ever done in my life.
It's touching.
To do something like that and to see them kind of like, supporting each other, collaborating, creating their own little communities within this wider community is just like, it's really special. And that is something that's like, goes away from the market, goes away from money, goes away from, it's just people, human interactions. And it's just, I don't know, it's special.
It's incredibly special.
And it stays, they're not going like, they're all there, like they're all supporting each other, and they found ways to, I always say this actually when we start, it's like, I encourage you to find a safe space within this space, because you will need a safe space. Because you really need a safe space within the NFT ecosystem. And so I have my safe space, with you, with Shivani, with, Dada, Judy, Bea, like Fanny, like I have my safe people, right?
Yeah.
And you really need those safe people. And that is fundamental as well when artists onboard onto the NFT space, that they have
a
lifeguard.
Yeah. Something to ground. And it must be the biggest problem. The amount of like misinformation, disinformation, nowhere to get good quality content. Because what is marketed is wrong. So maybe we can help inform minds through talks like these.
Definitely.
are there any resources that you like? Where do you go for information?
So actually, there's a few things that have popped up lately, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
One of them is Right Click and Save
Right-click save is amazing.
from ArtNome.
Yeah.
And the other is Outland.
Yeah.
And I really value what they're doing and the content that they're putting out. It's critical, it's interesting, it's thought-provoking, it's artist-focused. And it's where I'm going now to find good content, good resources, good information.
Well, it's probably...
What about you?
I don't know. I love right-click save. Twitter, to me, it feels like the algorithm's changed.
Same.
It feels like I used to be able to find voices, and no longer.
We're governed by an algorithm, you know? Like we spend our days, our time. Yeah.
My Discord is just like bombed out, right? Like I will go to my team channel and I will go to the Mocha channel, but like everything else is like, I have to go through like 100 DMs. It's so bad. I don't know. And maybe I just need to like step away for a bit, and be less digital, because it's the expectations to keep up are just impossible.
Impossible.
It's impossible. And like being empathetic and kind people that are willing and wanting to help, like you can't do it for everybody. So how to scale it, I don't know, but it's going to take time, right? And everything that is being rushed to market, that is being promoted, that is fast and loose, in my opinion, is not quality.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's like the simple, quick, and easy has never been a good way for me.
Yeah. Let's say something positive and we'll send it home. What are you most excited about?
I'm actually very excited about this moment in time because I think it brings together niches and like-minded individuals to form a safe space and to come together building what we've just discussed about and, you know, common values and common ideals. And so I think in moments like these, where everything is very noisy, is when little kind of communities then get created. And I think this is what I'm excited about, and it will happen, and it is happening.
I love that. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Again, Micol.
Thank you.
Yeah, with VerticalCrypto Art. I'm Colborn with Museum of Crypto, and thank you so much to DMINTI for the production.
Breaking news.